I'd like to call the Board of Public Works meeting of June 21st, 2016 to order. First thing is to ask if anybody is recording this other than LCAT.
Shirley Tancredi for the minutes.
Thank you. First on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes of the June 8th, 2016 meeting.
Right, you gotta make the list.
You have to make it.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of the June 8th meeting.
I'll second that. Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next is to review and approve the minutes of the executive session of June 8th.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from the executive session of June 8th, 2016.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So we're getting very close to the end of the fiscal year, so I figured it was another good time to update the board on where we stand relative to budgets. Partway through your package, you'll see the typical spreadsheet that I put together. What that spreadsheet represents is week number 49 out of a 52.4 week year. That means that we're 93.5% through the year as of week number 49. And I think you'll see very similar trends as to what we've seen in previous months, that we're trending very well compared to our budgets and very well compared to where we trended last year. As we've talked about before, it's been an extremely unique year with the water budget because of the significant true-up that we received to our credit from Springfield Water and Sewer at the beginning of this year. So as you take a look at the water expenses versus budget, that's a very favorable percentage that you're looking at there. The rest of the percentages are pretty similar. We did also receive a true-up, although a smaller one on the sewer side, so that in part is why the sewer expense budget is trending very well as well. And noting that, given now that we have a water and sewer enterprise fund set up, any underruns that we have in our budget, salary budget or expense budget, will get returned right back to the enterprise fund and help to maintain our water and sewer rates as low as they can be. I did highlight one item at the very bottom here, and that is just to note that, as the board probably recalls, the water and sewer budgets, payroll budgets, are carrying some employee benefit costs for the staff that are allocated to those divisions, Medicare, workman's comp, health insurance, and retirement. There was a budget number put together at the beginning of this fiscal year. That budget number gets trued up at the end of the year to reflect actual numbers. So there will be some adjustments that happen given, and I've seen those numbers preliminarily right now, given where we stand relative to payroll, we should be able to absorb some minor adjustments in those benefits between what was budgeted versus what was actually incurred within our payroll budget, so there's no need to go back to appropriations for a reserve account transfer, anything like that. But particularly given this is our first year of doing this, the town accountant did her best to estimate what those costs would be, but there were some estimates made, and some of them need to be adjusted at the year end. The other financial item that I wanted to report on tonight was our capital project summary. The spreadsheet you see here with the bright orange or bright yellow all over it is a spreadsheet that the town accountant periodically asks us to update, and what it does is it lists all our active capital projects and the status of the capital projects, and you can see there's columns added as we've reported on the status of those projects throughout the last year or two in a couple of locations. All the projects that you see in yellow, I've indicated to the town accountant, can be closed out. So they'll be taken off this sheet as of, I don't know if she's closed them out yet, but she will be closing them out very shortly. Then if you pay attention to the column about 2/3 of the way across the sheet where you see the large bold numbers, those are numbers where we are returning funds back to the general fund, or in water and sewer projects, it would be returned back to the enterprise fund. And if you take and sum all of those large bold numbers down, we're returning back over $57,000 back to the general fund or the enterprise funds on projects that have been done below budget. We don't have any projects that have finished over budget. We don't have any projects that we've had to go through and request an increase or reserve account transfer on. And it's worth noting too that earlier this fiscal year, I believe it was in September, we turned back about $125,000 on the Meadowbrook electrical upgrade. So it's, we've turned back, almost $175,000 this fiscal year. And most of that going back directly to the general fund.
That's great.
Nice work.
Moving through my items, I did want to note, we had talked about 19 Orpheum Street, the property that abuts the Harkness pumping station. Property line has been established. The private property owner has removed their encroachments on the property line, so we have GMH fence scheduled to get out there in the next week or two before the end of the fiscal year and put up the fence that we agreed to erect along the backside of that property for screening purposes. So expect that'll be wrapped up before the fiscal year is over. At the last meeting, I believe I mentioned that the Maple Shade water main replacement, which is the replacement of the existing water main from North Main Street along Maple Shade Avenue to Elm Street, was scheduled to be advertised for bid actually this Wednesday. It's the first utility project that we've completed the design on totally in-house, that we're competitively bidding out or receiving outside bids for. It was a little disconcerting and surprising to hear, I think it was yesterday, that Columbia Gas got back in touch with us. We had met with them, and we do this every year in the wintertime and early springtime to talk to them about upcoming projects. They ask us for that information. We give them that so they can plan their schedules, they can plan what they need to do, so we don't get into any conflicts between Columbia Gas projects and town projects relative to paving and utility projects. They owned up to their oversight. Was they recognized yesterday that the water main replacement project in Maple Shade was going to be taking place in a street where they have an existing cast iron gas main, and the state regulations require that any time you expose a cast iron gas main, it has to be replaced. So because the water main project would cross that gas main at multiple locations, and each one of the services would cross that gas main, the best way to approach that is to have the gas company come in first, replace their cast iron gas main, so they basically clear the site, so then we can come in after them and install our new water main and not get into an issue of working near or over adjacent to cast iron gas main. The problem is, they haven't done any design work yet. They haven't lined up the work yet. They recognize their oversight. They are hoping to be able to get that work done in July and August. But it requires us to at least step back a little bit and take a look at, do we want to move ahead with our piece of the project in Maple Shade Avenue this year, or might we be better off, given the potential impact on traffic, on schools, things like that, waiting and deferring that until after July 4th of next year, so that we can have the street completely clear, essentially to ourselves, and shut down traffic as necessary. And it's something that's worth talking about. I did talk to the police chief today. His leaning is, if there's no urgency to replacing this main, it's a main that's undersized, which is the primary reason that we're replacing it. It's an old cast iron line that is undersized and partly tuberculated. If we can wait, it might be a good idea to try to wait to schedule it during the lowest traffic months to have the lowest impact on traffic and schools. But again, it's something that we can talk about and decide, do we kick our project off so that we're not doing this in September and October, or do we try to do it next July and August?
I mean,
I'd hold off.
is there any downside to holding off, like price of materials going up, or?
It's hard to say. We all have to look at the crystal ball, but
Yeah.
it doesn't certainly look like, much as we've all been talking about inflation is going to hit at some point, it certainly doesn't look like that trend is going, positive inflation. In fact, there's discussion potentially as we're heading back towards a recession at some point in the near future. So, I don't expect labor pricing or material pricing to change dramatically in a year. Probably the upside is that bidding the project right now probably isn't the ideal time to bid the project. The ideal time would be bidding at the late winter, early springtime before contractors have lined up work. So if we push it off so we can bid it now that the funding has been approved as of this July 1st, we could bid it during the better time of year to be bidding projects and maybe get a better price than we
Put
would.
it out in the bid in December or
Correct.
something
Yeah.
for,
Right. What typically happens is a lot of the utility contractors rush like crazy to get everything done in the fall, early winter, and then they stop. And in some cases, they go to Portugal or things like that for a month or so, and then they
Yeah.
start thinking about the next
It might
next
not-
season.
Yeah, looking at it from that perspective, yeah, we're better off to wait.
So the only downside is that we'll have to make certain that Columbia Gas, and Columbia generally in their contractor, I don't know if it'll be RH White doing this, but probably RH White, they're generally doing pretty good with their patches and pavement repair these days, but we'll be looking at a gas line trench that will ultimately go through 2 winters, because it'll go through this
Right.
winter, and then we will overwinter our pipeline trench for a winter. So as long as we get a good quality trench from Columbia Gas this year that can make it through 2 years, we should be okay.
And then we'll do a reclamation and paving of that area.
Yeah, probably a mill and overlay. Yeah, I don't know if I think the sub base is fine, so there's no signs of any problems there, but we would then do curb to curb resurfacing.
It makes more sense to wait, I think.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay. So that'll be our game plan. I did want to mention that we talked before that we had the position of the Public Works Asset Management staff person. At the last board meeting, we talked that we had 3 candidates. We had 2 candidates that were, I think they're in line with what we originally expected, which was an individual with a couple of years of experience, not extremely extensive experience. And then we had a candidate that came forward with quite a bit more experience and capabilities that we were expecting that seemed to be an extremely good fit for the project, for the position. He is very interested in the position. I spoke with him again today and explained our current status, and he remains very, very interested in the position.
He's the one from the eastern part of the state?
He's the one, he actually lives in Rhode Island now, works for Mass GIS in Boston, but has lived in Western Mass in the past and is really looking to move back to Western Mass. It's really where he always wanted to be, so this is an opportunity for him. So I think he's a good fit. He remains interested. We just need to work through how to make that happen. A couple of other staffing items, just to make you aware that we will likely be posting 2 union positions, at least 1 and maybe 2, in the next couple of weeks. When Mark Langone moved on to the town of Hamden, that opened up the cross-connection inspector position. Now that we have an additional staff person who's been trained and will likely be, he may not be fully licensed quite yet, but we'll have confirmed that he's passed his test, so it's a matter of just submitting the paperwork to get licensed. We're likely now in a position where we can post that position and refill it internally. If we do that, that then may open up another internal position, possibly the pumping station, second person position, which then would open up an opportunity for a skilled worker to move into that position. So we have to sort of fill the higher position first, depending on what happens internally with filling that higher position, then potentially move another staff person up, and then would likely be looking ultimately for a skilled worker at that point to backfill at the bottom of the organizational chart. And again, I expect that all to be probably starting in the next couple of weeks and probably be finished within the next month or so, because we'll have some time associated with posting and evaluating each one of those positions. And we've spent some time, and staff have spent some time getting themselves prepared for these openings, so I think we're pretty well positioned. I did want to note that I sat in on a meeting today with Robin McDonald, also from East Long Meadow, and representatives from Long Meadow, the town manager, the building inspector, and representatives of a developer of a piece of property in the vicinity of Dwight Road and Maple Street. Could be a potentially interesting project in that it might involve 2 communities from a joint permitting standpoint. It might actually create some opportunities to do some interesting things with some of the traffic issues that we have right there. Going all the way from Converse Street, which isn't ours obviously, down to the to the Dwight Williams Maple Street intersection, which isn't ours, but is awfully close to us, down to the Benton Drive, Chestnut intersection as well, and possibly ultimately be tying all three of those together and possibly doing some geometric improvements as well. It's
Have them timed or?
timed and then coordinated as well, so that they operate together. But it's very early in the process, and it's fairly unique because the developer has to get both communities thinking in the same mindset so that they can have a single project that crosses into two communities that ideally and hopefully gets approved as a single project versus two separate projects that are different because they're trying to meet the requirements of each different community.
Would you have joint meetings with the joint, to do that?
That was the intent of today's meeting, was at least to start the discussion and take the temperature really of the planning officials in both communities. You know, is that concept something that the communities would entertain, or should the developer worry about what's in East Long Meadow needs to meet East Long Meadow requirements, and what's in Long Meadow meets Long Meadow requirements, so the two don't touch?
Is it an extension of the nursing home is there, or? Is it-
Not really something I can get into at this point,
Okay.
but I expect it'll be moving forward in the relatively near future, but there are some internal meetings that are being set up with East Long Meadow and Long Meadow staff in the next couple of weeks, and then likely, as you suggested, perhaps a joint planning board meeting that gets held with both planning boards.
I think it'd have to be.
Yeah,
Ultimately, both boards will have to issue a separate approval.
Right.
But at least as the project is kind of coalescing into a single project, they need to stay together, and then maybe they split when they have to do their own specific approvals, but, yeah. So it could be interesting, could do some good things for the town, from a tax revenue standpoint, potentially from a utility standpoint, if we're looking at trying to convince them that they should deal with us versus deal with Springfield Water and Sewer, has a pipeline right down Dwight Road that they could tie into Maple Street instead. Would be beneficial, obviously, to us to be supplying them with water versus having them buy directly from Springfield. But
what would be the advantage of buying from us versus Springfield?
for us, it's revenue.
No, I know what's,
Yeah.
I know the wind side for us.
I'm working on that. I don't have my elevator speech ready yet.
The shame of it is if it was two private people, they'd figure out a way to work together. So let's hope the two public sectors can figure out a way to work together. So.
There were reps of both planning boards there today, and everybody seemed to be of a similar mindset, so, you know, seems
How many
to have
acres are
potential.
sitting in that corner?
Not really certain I want to get into the specifics at this point.
Hang in there, T. More to follow.
All right,
Stay tuned.
There's a time and a place, and this probably isn't it.
all right. So he waves a big juicy steak in front of me. Tells me. All right,
Has
Bob.
Long Meadow decided what they're gonna do about a service building? Have they moved forward on that?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Obviously, that could be a location, but it probably isn't the highest and best use of that property.
No, I was just thinking about the tennis court.
The tennis court would probably be.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, well, there have been no further contacts or questions or...
Okay.
I think the last item I had was just to note that our consumer confidence reports did go out last week. I believe they went out on the 15th. I've had a couple of phone calls come in, and it was encouraging to see that the phone calls that have come in to date were relative to the last piece of the report that we put out that talks about what residents can do relative to backflow prevention, and how it's a good idea to install vacuum breakers on your hoses, particularly if you're going to be applying chemicals or things like that using your lawn hoses. So I had a couple of residents spoke up and said, you know, what are these all about? Where can I get them? And positive
good.
message.
People are reading it.
Yeah. So that's all I have tonight.
Okay. Next is building facilities report.
Alrighty, couple of items for the board this evening. Pine Knoll Camp opened on Monday this week. The guys spent a couple of weeks getting the pool ready, and the Parks Department was up there last week, cutting down brush and loving up the place, so it looks great. I also had some help from Mr. Murphy and Palmer Paving to kind of prep the road up there. The road is in much better shape since we did those millings and everything else, but we had our staff go up there and grade it, and Palmer came in with their vibratory roller and rolled it all out nice, so hopefully it'll stay together for this this camp season. So the place looks great, kids are loving it, and everything's going well. Summer projects started this week also. School's out as of Friday, so one of our projects was to help doing some minor renovations to the high school library. The last couple of days, our building facility staff has been up there removing all the bookcases. I've had Country Glass in there. They've taken down some glass walls that are original with the building. So we're wrapping up that project as far as the demolition phase as of tomorrow.
That's the high school?
Yeah, the high school. High school's buying all new furniture for the whole library, so we just helped with moving all the old shelving, the original shelving and furniture that was obviously with the building from when it was open. So Country Glass will be in probably towards the end of the week to install another new glass wall to separate from a classroom up there. We're removing the reception area by the end of the week. So like I said, probably by the end of the week, we'll be done with our portion of the project. And I know the school has ordered their furniture. I think there's pretty much probably 6 to 8 week lead time. So like you said, they'll probably be getting that done probably late July and get it ready for school opening around that time. Our annual facility inspections have started this week also. We have Wilco Sales in doing our operable walls at Meadowbrook, Birchland Park, the high school. Fire extinguisher inspections are taking place and wrapping up by tomorrow. They've gone through all the buildings and clocks and PA system this week. Also met with our energy efficiency guys as far as our Meadowbrook and Mountain View lighting retrofit project. Met with the contractor today, went to Mountain View and Meadowbrook. They'll be starting next Wednesday and should be wrapping up, I believe, by the last week of July, the total retrofit of all the Meadowbrook and Mountain View school.
The interesting thing about Mountain View is the way the incentives worked out. The capital portion of the material portion of the project is being paid for through this current year's utility budget as an energy incentive improvement, or energy improvement. The utility company incentives are enough to cover the entire labor portion. So basically, Mountain View is 100% paid for this year. There will be no cost going forward and only savings otherwise going into next fiscal year.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's nice. So probably see some good energy savings at Mountain View this year, and probably Bob's got to do some more shuffling around with our energy credits a little bit, but it's all good. Town Hall renovation project. The accountant's office, all the rough electrical has been done, doors have been moved and taped. We should be finalizing all the taping and everything else by the end of this week. Painting will commence on Monday of next week, and carpet will be installed by Thursday, Friday next week, and we'll be moving the accountants back into their portion of the office probably the week of July 5th. So that whole phase will be complete for the town hall renovations, and we'll wait till next November, December to get started on the second phase. We got the approval for the monies at town meeting this year, so we'll be moving forward with that portion of the project this winter.
And one more thing, if you don't mind, is the carpeting will also include the hallway when we're doing this, so the
Yes.
hallway will be restored about the same time as well.
Yeah. Like you said, what we're gonna end up doing is doing the portion we ripped out and just putting the new carpet up to that point, and then abating the other portion of the carpet. Because that's gonna entail going into the meeting room, down into the selectman's office, because we're gonna end up, like I said, doing all that. I don't wanna put a new carpet throughout the whole place, we're gonna be doing more construction, so, like you said, it'll look nice. Field report, step 2 application will be put down at Birchland Park and Meadowbrook School as of Friday this week. And then the final application at the remaining schools at Maple Shade Mountain View will take place on Tuesday, June 28th. And that should complete our step 2 application. And we did end up purchasing our other 3 steps for this upcoming year, so we'll get those on the schedule for application as needed. COA generator, we had Cummins Northeast come out last Friday. We did the startup, tested the unit. So the unit is up and running, fully operational, so any power outages or any issues that may arise, we have another site for emergency personnel if need be, or as a backup facility for people to go to.
Does it do like a test run, like once a week or something?
We test it on Monday or Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m. under load completely, like we've set up all our other generators. So on Tuesday morning, 7 a.m., you'll hear that running. It's pretty quiet considering as we started up. We have a good sound attenuating enclosure on it, so you really can't even hear it within the building. So and it's pretty close.
How long does it run for?
It runs for about 15-20 minutes. Depending, and then it has a cool down operation in it too, and that's, I believe, 5 minutes, and then it shuts down. So the only thing we have left to do now that the generator's up and running, we just have to plywood the ceiling, and we're actually going to enclose the rest of the enclosure over there with some fencing, just to, kind of protect it from, I guess, kids and prying eyes that want to take a look at that. So we'll be finishing that up in the next week or so also. Other item, we'll be meeting with Jason from Little Tykes. We're going to do a site visit on Friday this week at 9 a.m. to go over Mountain View and Meadowbrook on the playscapes to lay out what the new equipment is going to encompass and get a footprint of what we need to excavate around the old equipment and start the demolition of the old equipment. So hopefully, I'm actually reviewing the specifications that some came in today. I've asked for some more information, and we'll be getting going on that probably in the next few weeks. And that's all I have.
Okay. Anything on highways and utilities?
Yes, John Street Water. We've put in approximately 540 feet so far. We've had the gates in for the tie-in for the Village Green, two entrances on Helen Circle and Shaw Street. We haven't tied it in yet. We're going to be doing a tie-in on one of the entrances to Helen Circle to give us water. Then we can test that portion while the crew continues going towards Alvin Street, and probably have two crews putting in services at that time. So that's going well now. We're continuing to do the markouts and appointments and so forth. On the trees, we're in real good shape on trees as they come in. I'm able to investigate them. The ones that have come in, we can do with our high lift now, since we have that. So I'm waiting for the next rainy day where we can take care of those. The other ones, the contractor's going to be taking care of the other ones that were on the bid. As far as berm, the berm's done, lumen seeding's done. We got a little bit more of road repair we have to do, and then we're starting Thursday on the catch basins now. We're going to be doing a couple in anticipation of the paving going on, and then we got a big list. We'll start on that. The parade route, we've been doing the painting on it. The last night's going to be this Friday, the 24th, where we'll do all the circles and the arrows and all the handwork and get that all set for the parade. The summer help we have, we've been doing all the hydrants on all the town buildings, parade routes, and the signposts are done now. We're doing any newly paved road that has been done recently. We're having all those painted. The older gentleman that's Boswick is on Allen Street now. Parade route's done, so he's working right along. A transfer station, Darryl and his crew, of course, have been working for Dan there, but we have them doing some cleanup there, so that's in real good shape. As far as the future, we're going to be doing catch basin cleaning brush grinding, sweeping, manhole repairs, all that stuff up and coming. And of course, we're gearing up for the 4th of July carnival in the parade. So be all set for that. That's all I have.
Very good.
And last but not least, town engineer.
Town engineer, I'll just give you 2 updates. The roadworks, we've been very busy. They were paving today and they're going to pave tomorrow. We're about 2/3 of the way through. We've got about 9,000 feet of road has been paved. Millbrook Sanford, Pease Road, 1,500 feet Porter Road, 3,200 feet Allen Street, 2,700 feet, which they did today from basically the top of the hill up by Rose Terrace down past Porter Road to a stopping point in between Porter Road and Markham. Tomorrow they'll be paving Markham and 2 sections of Allen Street. So that'll be tomorrow's work. So we've got about 5,000 feet left. So we again Markham, Allen, and then Parker Road, and then again that little piece of Allen Street. It's tracking at about $20 to $40 a foot, depending on the Pease Road is real cheap. It's narrow and there's very few utilities. So it's right now it's about $38 a foot if you average it all out. I guess that's it.
Probably worth mentioning, we are looking right now at, similar to what we did on the Shaker side of the Pease Road Hill, now we're looking at the backside heading down towards Old Farms and Lee Street. There's a couple of particularly bad sections that might benefit from some localized mill and pave type work that we did, particularly there's an area down in the flat. We all know probably the best long-term solution on that side of Pease Road would be putting in drainage and doing some more extensive roadway improvements, but before we take another swing at that sometime in the future, there are some areas that just need to be patched and made better, and so we can get a number of years out of them before we do anything more significant.
So we're trying to track and just to see what we've got left, and then hoping we'll be able to get that piece done.
What Mass DOT will still fund roadway improvements that need to be at least 500 feet in length, so we have to find 500-foot sections that that are warranted bad enough to require some mill and repave type work. They won't fund anything smaller than that.
All right, and then on the landfill, today Darryl, Luke, and Brett have been doing good work out there. Today they finished the straw bale line, double stacked row all the way down. I notified Concom if they want to come out and take a look. They're gearing up for screening of the vegetative support layer, 2-inch minus. We've got a pad kind of started in the top area of the phase 1 closure area, so that'll be where we'll stockpile the material and we'll start closing it in pieces as we go forward. I guess that's. Oh, and there's still some trees to be taken down. They have taken some, but there's still a few left on that north side.
We are starting, once Dan gets a chance to catch his breath, once we get through the paving rush, getting a little bit more into looking at Elm Street. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Elm Street sidewalk locations. I know in the past we've identified that that's where we're going to go next with our sidewalk dollars, and it's not as difficult as Maple Shade, but it's not necessarily an easy location given the width of the right-of-way, the number of trees and utility poles that are out there. So Dan's heading north in Elm from Maple Shade.
Maple Shade on the north side or the west side.
We've talked before that the next location to work on sidewalks is going north from Maple Shade, and figuring out first which side of the street is best.
Right.
Because you don't want to encourage people to go back and forth across Elm Street. It's not particularly safe to do that, so we need to find the best side that has the least number of encroachments and challenges. And
there's a fair number of trees, fair number of poles, so it's doable, but we're going to have to give it a little thought.
I think you guys on the west side could be cross at the Maple Shade intersection.
Right. Yeah. So that we may be in a position to go forward with that this year. I'm not, we'll see. We try to get all the paving work out of the way so we can really focus on that next.
Yep.
Did you bid on that? Put that out the bid?
Depending on the complexity of it, maybe.
Yeah.
And the time schedule is, timetable. It's our advantage is that we have the staff, but the staff can stop what they're doing and go on to something else if there's an emergency. On some of our more intensive projects, we really don't want to let that happen. We want to get in, get it done, get out of there, and not start and stop, which happens sometimes.
Yeah. So should have an answer in a couple weeks.
So about how many miles did you do this year?
Paving 14,000 feet, so
So almost 3.
almost 3.
And then what about last year?
I don't have that number.
Just a guess.
A little 2.5 miles.
I would have thought it was more,
It actually,
because we had
it was
50% more funding last year,
It was
so we,
So it could have been
Probably closer
4 or
to
5. So we have 111 or 12 miles. So at 3 or 5 miles a year, we're talking
road life,
30 years.
15 to 20 years.
No,
and that
not
doesn't
20
work.
or 30
Yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah.
So do we have to try and figure out how to do a little more, or are we going to survive? I mean,
That'll be one of the things that come out of the pavement management plan that VHB is working on. In fact, they've completed all their survey of the town-wide, and we'll be coming up, where are we today? Where do we need to go? What might it cost? What should we be trying? You know, right now, I've told them, we're assuming we get Chapter 90 money only, because as far as I know, other than utility projects, the town has never put capital money into road restoration, but communities are starting to realize they have to do that, because Chapter 90 just isn't enough money to keep up with.
that was my question.
Yeah.
So we have a unfunded liability hanging around out there that might be
Yeah.
just silent, that we need to at least be talking about.
Yeah, and maybe they'll go with the same thing when we do with sidewalks. Maybe we can
Right.
get them just
Something
throw
per
in
year
every
or something. I mean, it
Yeah.
isn't still probably going to get
Especially do the
done.
side roads, because some of the side roads are really
Yep.
in bad shape,
Right.
so.
And then
They're
I
small in most
think,
cases.
to the extent we can, crack seal and
Right.
seal and do whatever other minimal mitigations we can do to extend the life. It just looks like when you do the math, we got to figure something out strategically long-term, because 20 or 30 years, they don't all last that long, right?
So, yeah, it would be, 30 years would be great.
But also, we've been doing sections rather than whole streets. If
Right.
there's a bad section of the street, we've been doing that, like we did on Denslow down towards the...
Right, but less than 3 miles into 111
Right.
is like
Right.
2%, which means 50 years.
Yeah.
So this year, we only did the equivalent of a 1/50th of a year.
It's a statewide problem. If you take a look at the conditions, and it's a nationwide problem, you take a look at the conditions of the roads, and they have, you know, overall, everything is worse than it used to be. The Mass Turnpike is worse than it used to be. I-91, our roads are worse than they used to be. Because, yeah.
To that end, though, our water and sewer is probably as good as it's been in years. Are we looking at a lot of transite and other stuff that's just hanging around out there
We
that we've got?
still have a lot of transite out there. We still have a lot of old sewer lines out there. They're less obvious. Obviously, roadways are obvious because you drive over them every day.
So maybe we need to get a feel for that too,
Right.
just strategically, because I know at one point pipes were breaking all over the place, and we had to do some
Right.
water and sewer. It seems like it's calmed down.
Right. Things don't last forever, so it's, you know,
Right.
there is, if you might be looking at 50 to maybe 100-year design life on some of the underground utilities. Fortunately, we're newer than Springfield. Springfield, you know, has a lot of 100-plus-year-old underground infrastructure. It's starting to fail on that.
Right.
Ours is newer. We're not there yet, but
But somehow we
Yeah.
have to be at least strategically planning for it.
Right.
Just because we might have 7 more years, if all of a sudden in 7 years, 20% of our water or sewer has to be replaced, it's,
I think we're doing a good job, because you know, we don't have the water breaks we were having.
we don't have the water breaks, but if the transite or whatever, that cast iron, it's all was put in that big phase of build out in the 57 to 64 era, which it was. There was a lot here. And all of a sudden, we're getting to 60, 70 years on some of those neighborhoods. Are we gonna all of a sudden have all the Spade houses and all the Redden houses and all that? I mean, there's a bunch of builders that came into town from like 52 to probably 72. I don't have the perfect demographics, but I think that was our pretty big build out of neighborhoods.
Right,
Now we're
we're
getting
still
on to
using
50, 60, 70 years old.
clay sewer mains and
So anyways,
transite water
just-
mains.
This is a point of.
sure. Fortunately, with at least sewer lines more than water lines, there are techniques out there, some of the lining that costs significantly less than replacement, that'll essentially extend that life back to where it had been. So it's you're not necessarily digging it up and reinvesting 100%. You might be reinvesting 25% to get 100%. recapture of your life of the infrastructure. But yeah, it's an issue.
That's everything I got.
Okay.
Agreed.
Next is to schedule our next meeting, which we have talked about Wednesday, July 6th, 5 o'clock at the service building. And now I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session with respect to strategy on collective bargaining, and we will not reconvene.
Like to second that motion?
All right, roll call vote, Mr. Mayberry?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Burak, aye.